guys, I'm back with part 2 of History is a Lie. I don't recall exactly where I left off, but they were saying about an underground discovery. I remember I was like, wow, it stops right here, like of course coincidentally right here, you know what I mean? But yeah, that's how it is. So underground discovery, they were looking about what's underneath, so let's go.
Or can tell us why it was created. It is a city, perhaps long ago used for commerce. Windows, doors, and narrow paths lead you to the storefronts.
We know that it was pretty secretive, whatever it was that was down here, because not too many people know anything about it.
The underground world stretches several city blocks and possibly beyond. Some speculate this was created in the 1800s.
Even Kingston's City Hall is quite questionable. The whole basement is lined with archways that were buried under the soil until fairly recently. You can see examples of these large arches in the west wing, which is the back of the structure, but also all the way along the front of the structure. Almost all of these today have been converted into windows and doors, but the point is that they weren't designed to be covered. Yet in photos from the 1860s, you can clearly see that the building is buried all the way up to the main floor. Market vendors are actually using the main floor as storefronts. You can't even touch those windows today, they're too high up. I never understood why they designed the building like this, because if there was any kind of flooding, it would just pour right into the dry moat. And in the winter, that's exactly what would happen. The dry moat would fill with ice and water, and there was nowhere for it to drain. And now that I've seen pictures of buildings getting excavated, I wonder if the basement of City Hall wasn't designed to be completely above the ground, like it was up on stilts, on display. The subject of aqueducts always comes up with the mudflood community. Greco-Romano style aqueducts seem to be a common feature. For example, there's a Romanesque aqueduct in Mexico. You want aqueducts? Kingston has one of those too. Maybe. Well, technically it's in Napanee, which is actually 30 minutes outside of Kingston. A small section of this bridge is made of stone, and though there has clearly been some restoration work done to it, especially around the base, which has more concrete, there doesn't seem to be any kind of record of any kind of stone bridge being built here, and there seems to be no record of this restoration. I know this is just probably a bridge. Another thing synonymous with the mudflood is star forts. There are some pretty intricate designs, and though many still stand today, there are some drawings of older ones that will really blow your mind. Some are really small, like the ones in Kingston. We have a few, like Fort Frederick, Fort Henry, that's a bit more of a sizable star fort there, and there's a little bit left of the original French fort, Fort Frontenac. But at one time, the entire city of Kingston was walled off. The oldest depiction of City Hall that I can find, supposedly dating to 1850, shows a wall that we now call the Market Battery. And a small portion of this wall has been excavated, but you'll notice that the wall is actually sunken down, and you have to climb down into a hole to access it. But like I said, all of Kingston was walled off at one point, so that Market Battery would have been attached to the rest of the wall, right? Well, what did that Market Battery
I'm so confused. This is
that looks like a
what?
freaking star fort. Have you ever seen the Statue of Liberty? Don't let that cute toga and the shiny flame distract you, because Lady Liberty is holding a secret that's completely out in the open. Just look down. Lower. No, lower. Oh, no foot stuff. Lower. Yes, that. The Statue of Liberty is standing on top of a star fort. So there's a theory that some of the really big buildings were constructed by giants. But if they were built by giants, it would explain why they have such high vaulted ceilings and such enormous, gigantic doorways. You know what? Let's save this one for another video. The art of map making is very serious. There are liberties taken. Yes, sometimes islands are misshapen, but map makers were meticulous. They wanted to be as accurate as humanly possible. But then you find stuff like this. What is this? I've asked several Americans, hey, what did your teacher tell you about why California used to be depicted as an island? And they all replied, what? The world used to know California as an island. Again, map makers wouldn't just screw around. People needed these maps to navigate. So why is California an island? Seriously, when I was a kid, I was told that cartographers were mistaken by the peninsula off of Mexico, and they just assumed it went on forever. But that doesn't explain these 4 islands that just happen to perfectly correlate with the largest mountains in that region. Oh, and this is my favorite part. Where's San Francisco? The city by the bay. Oh, it's by the bay, but it's by the wrong bay. It's supposed to be at another bay. So how does that happen? Whatever it was that filled in the strait with Earth, did it cover up the old San Francisco? And since people just remembered the name San Francisco, they're like, yeah, we'll just call one of the new reset cities San Francisco, the city by the bay. And this got me wondering if this had to do with the Streets with No Name song. Oh, Streets with No Name. That's not the song. But I highly encourage you to go through some of these maps, because you're going to find a lot of stuff that surprises you.
It's all
like
history, and I
entire
don't like
islands
history.
that are just not there anymore, like Friesland. There's Greenland, Iceland, and Friesland. Except Friesland doesn't exist anymore. Is that a secret Illuminati island? I don't know, but I'm going to say yes. Subscribe to my channel. Not that I would ever agree with such a gross oversimplification, but the main group that the mudflood community seems to attribute these structures to is an old empire. The largest empire to ever touch the face of the earth. And you don't even know it exists. Okay, I want you guys to sit down for this part, because this is true. Tartaria, also known as Tartar or Tartary, is depicted throughout history on several maps, often colored in yellow, and it changes shape and size throughout time as it grew and shrank. Tartary at one time almost took up the entirety of Asia, and even parts of Europe, the Middle East, and Northern Africa. I didn't even know Tartaria existed until just a couple months ago. A few people have told me that they knew about it, but that they were taught that Tartary is just the word you use to describe wild, uncharted lands. Barbary, Tartary. So Tartaria was supposedly mostly occupied by nomadic tribes, kind of like the Mongolians. Oh, Tartaria is Genghis Khan's empire, isn't it? So the most baffling thing about Tartaria is how long it seemed to last. Well into the 17 and maybe into the 1800s. So the problem with the theory of Tartary just being wild lands is that Tartary has their own flags, their own symbols, their own culture, and there's recorded lineages for their emperors. For uncharted wildlands, they seem pretty well charted. They mark down cities and towns and provinces, mountain ranges and rivers and lakes and forests. If Tartaria was this big, then they must have had a lot of cultural influence throughout the entire world. And this is why the mudflood community believes that every city around the world has the same neoclassical architecture. And Tartary wasn't the only world power, and it's hard to tell just how integrated they really were. See, this is what I'm talking about. There's just too much information for me to go through all in one video. I can't even seem to form a coherent line of thought here. I've always enjoyed these alternate reality conspiracy theories. It sort of reminds me of the electric universe model, which isn't really a conspiracy theory. These are the kinds of puzzles I give myself. And usually when I jump into a new conspiracy theory, it doesn't take that long for my brain to just start naturally rejecting what it's hearing, because logic and reason take over. But sometimes when I start to try to debunk something, I can't grasp on anything, and I just keep falling deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole. Sometimes that's because the information you're getting is fake, like the UFO phenomenon. And unfortunately, for those that love the mudflood theory, there is a good deal of evidence that this is all manufactured as well. But even not knowing what the sources are for some of these things, some of the photos, even not knowing what the context is, it still leaves you with questions. It still leaves you wondering, what the f*** are these cursed images? The whole concept of ancient aliens actually comes from a string of common stories from cultures all around the world of these people that came and taught them culture and law and technology. And oddly, several of these cultures actually depict these gods very similarly as bearded men that carried little purses and had like a little doodad in their hand. I don't know what that means. I'm betting whatever the purse and the doodad are the same thing as the orb and the scepter. I think that these gods were actually just survivors of Atlantis, and they brought Atlantean technology and the knowledge that Atlantis had accumulated. But I'm having so much trouble trying to fit it all in right now. Like, I don't know if they were trying to rebuild Atlantis. For example, were the pyramids in Mexico already there before the Atlanteans showed back up? Or when they showed up, did they build a brand new style of architecture? Yeah, I'm just having trouble trying to make this whole conspiracy theory work. If the Tartarians, if they're the ones that built all the neoclassic, neo-Gothic style architecture, then who built the original Greek and Roman stuff? Around the time that I started looking into the mud flood, the movie Aquaman came out. And that's when I started to wonder why Atlantis is always depicted as having Greco-Roman architecture. I mean, yeah, it's dumb to assume that all the artists that have ever depicted Atlantis know that they're depicting Atlantis as Greco-Roman. So this is where we integrate the conspiracy theory that we have the historical timeline completely wrong. One book has like a whole series of equations that you can use to figure out what the astronomical layout was at the time that the structure was built or that the events happened, so that you can tell what time period that it was supposed to really happen in. Sir Isaac Newton was actually one of the proponents of this theory, and he believed events like those that happened in the Greco-Roman times happened in more the medieval era. Some people, they like to add around 1,000 years. I only really have like two heroes in science, and that's Nikola Tesla and Sir Isaac Newton. There's a few different theories about how the history timeline got screwed up, and there's so many different places that they could have added time. If you stretch time out, I guess it would be sort of like a stick of gum. It would break in a bunch of different places, but there wouldn't be one chunk that had the most stretch. That was a bad metaphor. But some time periods in their entirety are questionable, like the Dark Ages. There's so little written history for the Dark Ages that it's possible that it just never happened. And I mean, all of England's history around the time that Rome supposedly left is really questionable. That's why their history is replaced with the story of freaking King Arthur and the Round Table. That's fiction. That's not real. But that's their history. There's a lot of competing theories to how this time was changed, but the most commonly used argument was that Pope Sylvester II and Emperor Ottoman III, glad I remembered that, they teamed up and basically added years to history so that they could say that they were the rulers at the turn of the millennium into the year 1000. One of the theories is that the entire Roman Empire is a lie, and that it's a giant cover-up to explain missing Tartaria history, missing history for other empires and nations and kingdoms that are gone now. But that's a hard pill to swallow because there is so much written history and archaeological evidence that Rome existed. So, sorry that I can't really buy into that one, guys. What I can believe, though, is that Rome had this technology. So if Greece is in the Middle Ages, then how does it really fit in?
I'm so lost.
Where's that architecture?
According
According to the stories of Plato, some guy told Socrates that his grandfather went to Egypt a long time ago, and a priest told him about an ancient Egyptian empire, and that's how we know about Atlantis. The Egyptians supposedly came from an ancient island chain known as Hyperborea. These were the people that supposedly built the pyramids all across the world. This story's kind of a riddle. In fact, the entire oral tradition of verbally telling stories of history. It's kind of a game, and we've totally lost the context of how to translate it. The story also includes subtle subliminal hints that are supposed to subvert a listener's critical thinking skills. For example, the fact that Plato added 3 degrees of separation and then a great deal of time to the story. You'd think that that would make the story less believable, but subconsciously it actually makes it more believable. Believe it or not, hearing that the story came from a wise old man makes it seem more credible, because wise old men are credible, even though they haven't even demonstrated that this wise old man even exists. Historians believe that Plato concocted this story as a way to inspire the Greeks, because it's about coming together and rising up against adversity, and about how arrogance is crippling and will end up sinking you in the end. But it's hard to tell because the entire art form of oral history telling is just dead. So the story of Atlantis apparently continued on with a story of another empire that followed up afterwards and then was struck down by lightning. I wonder if that's supposed to be Babylon? And Babylon, or at least the Tower of Babel, is always depicted as being Greco-Roman. Maybe the Greeks were actually just using old Babylonian technology. Anyways, I know this was a weird video. I didn't really debunk anything. I like to be as skeptical of this stuff as possible, but really I need to set this up for you, otherwise the whole rest of the series won't make any sense. Part 2 is going to be really good though. That's probably going to be my favorite video in the series. I'm going to be going into Nikola Tesla, his Tesla Tower technology, what he was trying to do with that. And not that I want to say I'm smarter than Tesla or anything, but I figured out what he was doing wrong. The technology that Tesla was using to draw atmospheric energy out of the sky, which is a real thing. I'm going to be going into all the science of that. I'm going to demonstrate how Tesla's design was kind of backwards. He had this idea of providing free energy to the entire planet, but the main thing that we need to see is if Tesla's concept of free energy could work within the domed buildings. Yeah, you could fit a Tesla tower inside of one of these domed buildings, but is that something that they actually did? Was this free energy a real thing? If there's one thing that I might accidentally convince you of in this series, it'll be the free energy thing. Because even I'm almost convinced, this close to being convinced that our ancestors had free energy. And we can't see it. Well, I can. Because I'm a genius. I'm gonna wake you idiots up too. Everyone will see what I see. I'm really looking forward to seeing how you guys react to this series. I hope you have fun with each other, debating in the comments section. Remember guys, this is just for fun. And next time, I'm gonna teach you guys how to build a free energy device better than Tesla.
Okay, so no offense, I do not want to watch this channel anymore. I don't even want to be, if it's just history based, then honestly I have nothing really, I have no interest in history whatsoever, and I have no idea what's even going on. Half that stuff in the videos sounded gibberish to me. I'm just what is he even talking about? The era of this, and I'm what? I'm just so confused. I do not want to watch his videos anymore. Thank you for the suggestion. I'll gladly take suggestions, but just to let you guys know, if it's history based or science based, I'm not really for that. The main thing I react to is horror. Of course, I'm not only gonna react to horror. Obviously, I'll gladly react to other stuff. But if it's I don't want to react to something where I don't even really react. If I don't really have an interest in it, then I don't really see myself reacting to it. Just because I'm just gonna be how high I was during this video, on my phone for a minute, or plugging in for a minute, even though I was still trying to watch or kind of understand what was being said. So again, nothing against you guys or anything like that, or I just don't really like to suggest I don't like history, so I'm not really for that. I'm not really gonna have the best reaction to that. So just so you guys have a heads up on that. Anything math, science, anything to do with that, history, just any of these school subjects, keep school away from me. I do not want to go back to school. Okay, so this kind of to me is going back to school, and I do not want to learn about school. I just do not want to learn about school. I'm just being brutally honest here. I'm not trying to hurt anybody. If I offend anybody, I'm sorry. I don't think I would, but just in case. And that's going to be it. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching, and peace out.